Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this COVID-19 telephone town hall. If you'd like to ask a question this evening, simply hit *3 on your telephone keypad, and an operator will come and take your question. Now, if you're listening to this online, you can type your question into the question box on our website. Now, we're just beginning to dial out to households across Arapahoe County, and we want to give folks a moment to join the call. So in the interim, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dirk, and I'll be your host tonight. Now, if you're keeping score at home, this is the 9th town hall that Arapahoe County has hosted since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal is to bring you critical information that can help keep you and your family safe, and also to answer your questions about the pandemic and resources that are available. This week, in addition to our regular hosts from the Tri-County Health Dept, we've brought together representatives from 6 school districts across the county to talk about school opening plans. Of course, we'll take your questions as well. And as a reminder, or if you're just now joining us, if you want to ask a question, you can press *3 on your telephone keypad or send your question through the website. To get things started, we'd like to welcome Arapahoe County Commission Chair, Nancy Sharp.
Hi, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We know you have lots of questions and concerns about helping your children return to school safely, and we're pleased to have our education officials here with us tonight. We're going to have all of our guests provide a rundown of how their districts are approaching returning to school. So thanks again for joining us tonight. And before we get started with our school officials, I'd like to introduce my fellow commissioner, Kathleen Conti.
Good evening, and thank you, Commissioner Sharp, and thank you for all for joining us. As you know, when it comes to combating COVID, just like raising kids as well, one size does not necessarily fit all. That is why we're pleased to have such a broad representation of our school districts on this call. Whether you live in Aurora or one of the southern suburbs or the eastern plains, you'll get valuable information tonight about what the school districts closest to you are planning this fall. And I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Commissioner Conti. Now we'd like to bring on Dr. John Douglas, the Executive Director of Tri-County Health, for an update on the newest public health orders. Welcome, Dr. Douglas.
Thanks, Dirk. Great to be with such a great group tonight. We do have some new public health orders. The governor had a press conference today, and the topic of face masks and how they can benefit the fight against COVID, prevent transmission, has been much in the news. And today the governor announced that he was issuing a statewide executive order mandating face mask usage. He was pretty careful about this. Many stakeholders, frankly, my local statewide group of public health directors had been encouraging him to take this step. We were watching with some concern the rising rates that we were seeing in Colorado, and we've certainly seen those rising rates in the 3 counties in our district. We've not only seen rising rates, but we're also now beginning to see what I think has been termed an uptick so far in hospitalizations, and that's sort of a sign that maybe it's just more than testing. We've been watching nervously as we see what's been happening across the entire Sun Belt of the U.S. with states, Arizona, Texas, Florida, that looked a lot like us the way we are now about a month ago, and their trajectory doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to do, but we were nervous about it. Some of you are probably aware Tri-County's Board of Health asked me to issue a mandate for a face masking public health order last week. It's a little complicated. It was an opt-out order, meaning it applied to each jurisdiction, city and county, unless they chose not to be part of it. The governor stepped up today and said, look, the rates are going up enough, the hospitalization is going up enough, and now he's got some data statewide that shows that those cities, and there are now about 40 jurisdictions, counties, and cities that have established face mask orders, see an average increase in face mask usage of about 15%. That may not sound like a lot, but when you look at the modeling data that our School of Public Health has been giving us, that amount of face mask use can really cover a lot of lapses in our social distancing, which are happening. And I think the governor was particularly driven by not only wanting the economy to open as fully as possible, but as a former educator himself, a member of the State Board of Health or Board of Education, I can tell you from conversations I've had with him, he's, I think, honestly concerned about getting our schools open. I'm super concerned about getting the schools open. And so he issued that order today. It will go for 30 days or unless extended. Honestly, my guess is it'll be extended because honestly, I don't think we're going to be in a lot better place in August. I'm just hoping it's not worse. It applies to anybody 10 years of age older. It applies in indoor locations. Some local orders have applied to outdoor locations as well. But in this case, the governor restricted it just to that location. Again, I'm pleased. I think this is a step that will help us suppress transmission, allow our businesses to open, hopefully begin to suppress the hospitalization increases we've seen, help our counties that are dealing with variance processes where there are certain metrics, and if you get above them, the capacity of your businesses to open gets more limited. And then, of course, finally, topic of the night, I think it will be assistance to each of our school districts. Thank you.
Thank you, good doctor, for joining us this evening and also your opening remarks. Now, if you've just joined us on this call, as a quick reminder, you can press *3 on your telephone keypad to speak with one of our operators and get your question in the queue for the evening. So again, if you have a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Now, before we get to your questions, we'd like to have each school official introduce themselves and talk briefly about where their district is right now with regards to reopening plans. So let's start with Superintendent Rico Munn of Aurora Public Schools.
Well, thank you and good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Rico Munn. I'm Superintendent of the Aurora Public Schools. We are excited at the chance to re-engage with our students back in learning. And we at the APS made a commitment early on in this crisis that we would do that in a way that followed the best public health advice. So we've been in very close contact with Dr. Douglas on a regular basis over the last 5 months. We follow the guidance of Tri-County Health and the Metro Denver Health Coalition as they think through how best to address and mitigate the impacts of the coronavirus. We're also informed, obviously, by what the state, CDPHE, and also at the federal level, CDC tells us, but we are really connected to the work of Dr. Douglas at Tri-County. Right now, we are planning for an in-person start using what's called a cohort model, meaning that we would keep groups of students together so that if there is any instances of a positive or suspected positive infection, that we would then respond by being able to isolate that and have quicker contact tracing to reduce the spread of the infection. We instituted mandatory K-12 masks next year, last week, now that aligns with the governor's order. And we were also excited to announce in the last couple of days that we will be doing regular testing of all of our staff for COVID-19. So we believe that with that culture of mask wearing and also with the culture of significant and rapid response of testing, that we can provide a safe and healthy environment. If public health advice changes, we will change our course, but each of us will be kind of monitoring that on a regular basis and responding as we can. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to the conversation.
So next up, let's hear from Superintendent Tom Terrell.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. Superintendent of the Byers School District. So I'm out in unincorporated Arapahoe County. My student count, to give you an idea, is 550 kids. That's K-12. Our plans as of today are to open up on our regular scheduled date of August 19th. We're looking at 5 days a week, and with increased social distancing, I do know our hurdles at this time that we're working on and still trying to figure out and using the guidance that Superintendent Munn had shared as well is busing, lunch, and passing periods. Those seem to be our biggest hurdles right now, trying to figure those out. Lunch is coming together. Busing seems to be coming together, but passing periods are going to be difficult at the secondary level. We're going to cohort with our K through 6. It's naturally easy to cohort those younger kids, and we'll follow the mask order in those grade levels as well. Obviously, the concerns are equal and great as they are in town as they are out here, because we do have a lot of our parents that commute into Denver and work in Denver. So we don't think we're any less at risk than our metro counterparts are. So I guess that's about it.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Superintendent Siegfried from the Cherry Creek School District 5.
Well, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight and share some of our thinking in Cherry Creek. I want to start by thanking Dr. Douglas as well for his continued support and work with our superintendents group as we plan for this ever-changing COVID world. Seems like moment to moment anymore. And I also want to recognize my colleagues, the fellow superintendents on this call. We talk weekly, if not more often, to do our best to develop models across the metro area to support all of our teachers, students, and their parents. In Cherry Creek, we've developed 2 models. First, 100% online, and as of tonight, we have 8,200 students signed up for that program. And then in-person learning. And in-person learning still does and always has had a chance for going remote or starting remote, and I know that's part of the conversation we'll have tonight. And we're working hard to make our remote learning, if we go or when we go to it this semester, much more robust than it was last spring, and to make an in-person learning environment as safe as absolutely possible for all of our staff, all 9,000 of them in Cherry Creek, and our 55,000 students. Thank you.
Next on the call, we're joined by Wendy Rubin, Superintendent from the Englewood School.
Hello, good evening. I'm Wendy Rubin, and it is my great honor to be the Superintendent of Englewood Schools. Like my colleagues, I would like to express my appreciation for our partnership with Dr. Douglas and our other partner agencies, and certainly my superintendent colleagues, because we do talk quite often and really try to, as Dr. Siegfried said, try to align our thinking as much as possible. In Englewood, we actually released our plans to our families yesterday. We have a plan to return to in-person learning, and then we have a plan for 100% online learning called Englewood eLearning. We have engaged well over 100 families thus far and numerous staff members in the creation of the plan and advising us on the plan. And I think that what's important to note is that while many people I think everybody is extremely anxious about returning, there are also many people who see great value in returning for their children. We heard comments like, my child is suffering. I am worried about my child's mental health. I am worried about their well-being. We've heard from other families that, the online option is going to be a great fit for them. And so, like my colleagues, just very grateful that we're in a position that we'll be able to offer choice to our families, because as difficult as this is and as frightening as all of this is, we know that we need to serve our students and our families in different ways returning. So we do have town hall events scheduled. Our first one, we had one for staff today. We have one for parents tomorrow at 1 p.m. We have another one for parents Monday at 6 p.m. And then for our Spanish-speaking parents next Thursday. And all of that information is available on our Englewood Schools website. Thank you.
Brian Ewert, the Superintendent from Littleton Public Schools, joins us now.
Good evening. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be able to represent the Board of Education from Littleton Public Schools in this forum. And I also want to thank everyone for joining this particular forum. I think that we can have lots of positive and productive dialogue that maybe doesn't always happen on social media. So It's a real pleasure to be here to answer questions. Littleton Public Schools is prepared to roll out a significant communication tomorrow. It would go out tomorrow afternoon to all of our families. And the first important item that will be on there is that we are, in fact, pushing back our start date to August 24th for a variety of reasons. Not only do we want to continue to monitor and watch the data in Arapahoe County and our local communities, but also just simply to prepare our schools. There are so many complex issues that we are dealing with and so many moving parts that we simply needed more time to put an effective model in place. We did have a restart task force comprised of administrators, teachers, and parents and community members, and we really landed on two models of return. The first model is obviously in person, following all of the CDC and Tri-County and state health department guidelines to the degree that we can, and also an online model. The online model will be described briefly in tomorrow's communication, and then a significant communication will go out next week to all of our parents as well, explaining in detail how that online program will operate. The other things that we've been working on is what will return to school look like. Obviously, there are so many health safety issues that we are addressing. The first one that I would say that we are going to be masking K through 12 students, and we will be taking periodic breaks throughout the day. We do think that it's going to be a complex issue to monitor and to make sure that we maintain masks on all of our staff and our students. Physical distancing is part of it, the learning environment and how we place desks in classrooms and other furniture, and also signage in hallways. We're working on a transportation plan, on a meal service plan. All of that will be in the communication as well. And with that, I just appreciate the opportunity to answer any questions that might come my way. So thank you.
And rounding out our superintendent super panel, we're joined by Patrick Santos, Sheridan School District 2.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be able to be on the line with you all and have a chance to talk and discuss this huge issue, this important issue. I, too, want to thank Dr. Douglas for the time that he spent with us weekly, talking to us, sharing understanding what's going on in their world. It's been really, really valuable. My colleagues as superintendents have been great to work with. I'm going to share with you Sheridan's plan and the two things that we're going to incorporate in that plan and with Sheridan. The first one is the model that we're going to incorporate a model limiting class sizes to 12 kids per class, and then we're going to offer overflow classes right next door. And we're going to use a Zoom format to do that, so kids will still be receiving all of their content using a synchronous model, but using shared spaces in the rooms next door to each other. We think that's going to help K-12 with us being able to distance our kids, and we're going to have to purchase a few more paraprofessionals to help us do that, but we think that it's going to be a solution to what we're looking at there. We're able to do that with the Zoom format. The teacher will wear a lavalier in one classroom and be able to communicate with the kids in the other classroom at the same time and concurrently be able to deliver that lesson. Our K-5 kids, our P5 kids, will all be in class for a full day. They will still incorporate the model I just spoke to. They'll be able to do that, do the portion of the day, transition over, and we'll have lunch in the classrooms throughout the day. Everybody in the district is going to be masking. Students and teachers will be wearing masks. We did go ahead and purchase 3 masks per student and 3 masks per staff member that are cloth masks that we will continually launder, so there's always clean masks available for kids. Imagine, if you will, walking into a 3D movie and getting the great glasses that come with the 3D movie. Putting your mask on as you start the day, you'll be asked to get a temperature check, symptom check, and then move on to your classroom. And then at the end of the day, as you're leaving, you'll drop the mask off and take it and be able to go on home. Secondary schools are going to look a little different. We are going to offer our core classes, and when I say core classes, I mean language arts, math, science, and social studies in person. So we'll do that. For example, 9th and 10th graders will take their core classes in the morning. They'll be able to have a lunch delivered to them, and then they'll go home and they'll take their elective classes virtually in the afternoon. And 11th and 12th graders will flip-flop. They'll take their electives in the morning virtually, and then they'll come in the afternoon for in-person instruction with language arts, social studies, math, and science. That's the intent of what we're trying to do. We're lucky sometimes to be small. We've got about 1,300 kids, a very dedicated staff that I think can be very flexible to adjust to this. What we like about our model is I think it allows us to transition from in-person instruction to remote learning without missing a beat. So appreciate the time, appreciate you thinking about us and allowing us to share our thoughts and what we have in mind.
Thank you very much for sharing those updates. Now, as a reminder, this is a live interactive telephone town hall. So if you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to get connected to an operator. And if you were listening to this through the website, on the webpage, there's a place for you to enter an online question. So let's go ahead and get to questions, and we will start with one from online. And this comes from Jenny and Superintendent Rubin in Englewood Public Schools. This one, I think, is good for you. Question is, what are the school district's plans in terms of protecting individuals in high-risk groups? Is there any possibility for those individuals to work remotely?
Thank you for the question. Great question. And I know that we are all hearing that, and we have employees wondering about that as well as our customers. So I believe that at this point, most of our districts, if not all of our districts, have been sending out surveys to all of our staff members to ask about any accommodations that they might need or work preferences for next school year. And we also want to make sure that we are making people aware of the protections that are in place, not only the standard protections under, our leave policies, but also under the Families First Coronavirus Act, which is in effect until December 31st, which also offers more robust leave policies for employees, including being able to take a leave to take care of a family member in certain circumstances. So I know that all of our HR departments are working hard to make sure that our employees have all of that information, and that we're also able to determine who might fall into those categories and how we can best arrange their work year and work environment for utmost safety.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Moving to our first call of the evening, we've got Caitlin from Englewood joining us, talking about the Cherry Creek School District. So, Superintendent Siegfried, this one's for you. And Caitlin, I see you want to talk about criteria for in-person learning and remote learning?
Yes, thank you for taking my call. My name is Caitlin Quattromani, and I'll have two middle schoolers in Cherry Creek. We've already registered to return to in-person learning and are looking forward to going back to school. Hi, Dr. Siegfried. Cherry Creek sent out an email yesterday advising what remote learning will look like in the event of an outbreak of COVID-19 that requires a pause of in-person learning. I'd like to understand what will constitute an outbreak. So, for example, is it based on a student or staff member simply testing positive for the virus? I'm assuming that it's highly likely positive tests will occur within our school community. So, as a parent, I'm concerned that a one-off positive test for a single teacher, as an example, could derail in-person learning for an entire school for several weeks. I wanted to get some clarification. Thank you again for taking my call.
Caitlin, thank you, and I appreciate you calling in and us having a chance to talk again. That's a great question, and actually we continue to look for guidance. I believe that CDPHE will be providing us with some of that guidance, hopefully as early as tomorrow, maybe next week, that will provide us a little bit of insight as to what that looks like, and maybe even Dr. Douglas can help with that a little bit. I go back without that guidance and look at what are past orders from the governor, similar to Safer at Home and Protect Our Neighbors, and what's the data associated with those, given that Safer at Home required us to do remote learning. And the metrics to move to protect our neighbors, we can't meet. And so there's still a lot of questions there on what will be the measure to move back and forth to in-person and remote, or even if in-person starts remotely. And so hoping that we get some clear guidance from our state as to what that looks like so that we can have some consistency between different school districts. And so you as a parent and myself as a superintendent can know what to expect and how to communicate. I do think that part of it will come down to our level of cohorting as well. When we're able to keep smaller groups of students together, a single case will affect smaller groups of students as opposed, so an elementary versus a high school could have a different impact because of what we're able to do to keep students together. But Caitlin, I too await that guidance.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Now joining us from Littleton, we've got John on the line. So Superintendent Ewert, this one's for you, talking about online learning. Go ahead, John, with your question, please.
Yes, I retired after 42 years as a teacher, split between Cherry Creek and Littleton. So two of the districts represented tonight are I'm fond of both of them. My concern is that given the spread of the COVID right now and the fact that we still don't know much about it, that schools are going to have to shut down again. Given that, I'm concerned that more energy, time, and effort is not being put into figuring out how to best deliver online learning. It seems to me that one of the knocks against what happened in the spring is that the online learning wasn't very effective. Well, people were thrown into it all of a sudden. I feel like right now, and I'm encouraged by the fact that Littleton is pushing back their start date. I would hope that time then would be devoted at least partly to coming up with strategies for making the online learning more robust. And more effective and more pedagogically valid.
Great, John. That is an excellent question and one we've been wrangling with since we went to the online distance learning last spring. So we've been doing several things. A lot of times the work that goes on inside the district during these periods of time isn't ever seen by the public. And what's happening right now is we are working diligently on evaluating what happened during our distance learning time in the spring. And we had lots of huge successes and we had some failures, and we're evaluating all of that. We've surveyed our teachers as to what their perceptions of being in the distance learning model was like. We've gathered all of that data. We've even had teacher focus groups to learn more about what went well and what didn't and how we can better support them. And so one of the key reasons that we're pushing back to our August 24th start date is to make sure that our teachers have significant time in training and are able to work together to understand how to better support students and families in an online environment. To a previous question, we fully expect to maybe have an outbreak in one of our schools, and we are going to be fully prepared to toggle into a distance learning model. That's one prong. The second prong is we are building a full online program for kids who choose not to come back to our brick and mortar schools at all. And significant time has been spent on looking at a platform and also courseware. And that will look differently than our toggling back to a distance learning environment as well. So we expect our teachers are going to be in significant training beginning about August 3rd for our new teachers that are arriving. To start talking about and working about on what does distance learning look like in an environment where we might be in school and then out of school and then back in school. So great question, and stay tuned. I think you're going to see a much more robust and a much more relevant online program should we have to toggle back into distance learning.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Next on the line, we're joined by Hannah from Littleton. And Hannah's got a question about the rise in COVID cases. So I think, Dr. Douglas, this is a good one for you. Go ahead with your question, Hannah. Hello, Hannah.
Are we seeing a coincident rise in deaths going with the increasing number of cases? And if so, what are the ages that are being affected?
Hannah, at this point, we're not seeing a rise in deaths. That's good news. I didn't mention it, but the case average age has shifted downward since we've been on this trend in the past 4 to 5 weeks. If it stays there, that's good news in terms of people getting really sick and hospitalized, although it could, of course, impact school-related matters. What we're worried about is what we've seen in other states, particularly Texas and Arizona, where first it was the younger folks, and then it began to get into the older folks, and deaths did begin to rise. So not yet here, knock on wood, hope that doesn't happen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. Next on the line, we've got Adriana, let's see here, from the Cherry Creek School District. So Superintendent Siegfried, this one's for you, and I believe it has something to do with school of choice. Go ahead with your question, Adriana.
Hi, Dr. Siegfried. I have a question for you with regard to our families at school of choice into their current school. We've been getting some conflicting information about whether or not those students will be allowed to return to the school they've choiced into for the 2021-2022 school year if they end up going with the virtual school option for this year.
So if you choose to go 100% online for this school year, you will be able to go back to your school next school year. That's hopefully easily and directly and provides clarity. We've even gone so far that students in our high schools that are seniors this year that are choosing 100% online can still get their diploma from their home high school. So I want you to choose the situation that's right for you and give you the opportunity to go back to your home school the following year.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. So it looks like we're just about halfway through tonight's telephone town hall discussion with Tri-County Health and Superintendents of Schools. We've had some great questions thus far, and we've got a lot more lined up. But if we've got room for you, if you've got a question you'd like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to speak with an operator to get into our question queue. Okay, back into our questions. Denisha from Aurora. So this one for Superintendent Munn. Go ahead with your question, please, Denisha.
Hi. I just wanted to inquire a little bit more in depth of what is the plan if, I guess, a teacher or 1 or 2 students in a particular class do test positive with COVID. What is the plan? Will the additional students in the same classroom be I guess, ordered in a sense to quarantine for the 14 days, or would you then, I guess, spread the classroom out into other classrooms? What would the plan be?
Hi, Denisha, thanks for your question. I think similar to what you heard Dr. Siegfried talking about with Cherry Creek, we are also operating a cohort model where the intention is that if there is an exposure within a cohort, that cohort could be sent to virtual learning for the appropriate period of time and then return back to the classroom or to the building once that time has elapsed. As was discussed, we are awaiting further guidance from the Department of Public Health as to exactly what those periods might be and what the triggers might be. So I think that ongoing guidance that we will receive the next few days will really help flesh that answer out.
You know, this is Dr. Douglas. If I could offer some supplementary comments, this was a question similar to the ones Superintendent Siegfried got. It's a hugely important one. We believe the State Health Department is going to be releasing school outbreak guidance that they've been working on for the past 6 weeks, sometime early next week. It is my understanding that they will probably be defining outbreaks similar to how outbreaks are defined in other settings. If 2 or more persons in a class or a cohort are infected, that would be considered an outbreak, and that class or cohort would be asked to not be in school for the duration of an isolation or a quarantine period. If a single person in a classroom is infected and there's not a reason to believe that others have been able to keep safe distancing from the person, then the current approach is a 14-day quarantine for everybody that's been exposed. We've played around with a lot of different variations on that theme. And there is some consideration that CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, might be looking at a modified time period. But right now, that is the time period that is likely to be advised next week by the State Health Department.
Thank you very much, Dr. Douglas. Next up, we've got Rhiannon from Centennial talking about Littleton School District. So I think Superintendent Ewert, this is for you, and we're talking about preschool. Go ahead with your question, Rhiannon.
Yes, I was I work for the preschool for Littleton Public Schools, and I was just wondering, nobody's really mentioned what the plans are for that age group, preschool.
Great. That's a great question, and that's actually will be answered in tomorrow's communication that will go out to the community, including staff. But the short answer is preschool students will not be required to wear masks at this time. So screening of both parents and kids is going to be critical at the preschool level. And we will spend some time with preschool along the way and throughout the year teaching them how to appropriately wear masks. So that should be very interesting. And so more to come on that from administration. Thanks for that question.
All right. Next, we're joined by Kathleen in Arapahoe County. And I think that Superintendent Terrell, this one's a good one for you about after-school activities. Go ahead, Kathleen, with your question.
My name is Kathleen Chandler, and I work with a nonprofit that does after-school activities. And we are just wondering, will there be any opportunity for any school district in Arapahoe County? Specifically, we have groups in Cherry Creek. We have other groups as well in the Aurora School District to have after-school activities for the children. This is a necessary activity, as a lot of parents use us, obviously, for daycare, but also our nonprofit ministry has a specific religious bent to it, and so we offer instruction. So what are the potential hopeful outcome for after-school activities?
Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, and any of my colleagues can help me out on this as well, because I know the after-school activities out in Byers are much different than the after-school activities in town. We have very limited after-school activities. Most of my reply to this is going to be around sports, so it really doesn't answer your question. We're currently doing small groups with our sport teams, our volleyball teams, our football teams. We're doing them in small groups. They're getting temp checked, and of course, when they're entering, they've got their masks, and when they're together, they're masked. But while they're actually practicing, they're not wearing those masks. Our library, the Arapahoe County Library System, is very close to our school, and so a lot of activities take place over there. And I'm sure they'll follow the same orders that the school districts have in place. But I apologize. I know I'm not answering your question, and so if one of the other folks want to jump in and share what on their side.
Sure, thank you. I can jump in just for Cherry Creek, and I think many of us are probably in similar places. For elementary school, besides before and after care, which we've been running successfully now for a couple of weeks, activities will be more virtual at home after before school. At middle school, we have canceled middle school athletics for the first semester, and middle schoolers will have virtual activities and opportunities at home. And high school, we're still looking for a little bit more guidance, what CHASA comes out with and how we operate sports and activities at the high school. But we will bend towards everything that can be done virtually to be done virtually, because then that allows us to maintain better cohorting if we're after school activities where students are not, mixing from different groups or different classes.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Siegfried, for that. Next up, we've got Lisa on the line joining us from Englewood. So, Superintendent Rubin, this one's for you about mental health. Go ahead, Lisa, with your question.
My name is Lita Phillips, and I'm a psychotherapist in private practice. I'm a former Cherry Creek School District teacher, and I also worked at Arapahoe Mental Health. And my concern is I hear a lot about mental health for children and their families, but I don't really hear how that's going to be addressed in the schools. And having been a teacher in the schools, I know there's limited mental health availability. And as a therapist right now who has a lot of passion about children and families, I would like to know how you're going to contact people like me or let it be known to families that people like me would like to do pro bono work with families. And I just feel like it's a big word that you hear, but you only see the National Suicide Hotline or the National Talk Hotline. And I feel like there needs to be more focus within the communities to help families realize what's available to them. So this really is a question for all the superintendents, maybe not Byers as much, I don't know, but that's my question.
Sure. Well, thank you, Lisa, and certainly appreciate your offer to be offering services and help. Mental health is a huge concern for all of us in terms of the impact that this has had on our students and our staff, the families. I know that even in Englewood, where we are a small district, we have been directly impacted by some very serious outcomes with COVID, including fatality of family members of employees, and this is a really big deal. Like my colleagues, we have also pushed back in Englewood our start date, and we'll be starting August 27th. And one of the reasons that we made the decision, for all of the reasons that everybody else has talked about with regard to wanting to push back the beginning of the school year, was intentionally to be able to provide very targeted and specific staff development and support for our teachers, and our building-based staff, and then also other staff members. So we will be spending some of our time back together really focused on mental health, on social emotional wellness and well-being. We are partnering with All Health for that work, and we will have some folks come in from All Health. And with regard to wondering how to get the word out that there are some mental health providers out there that would be willing to provide additional support, I think that working through All Health could be a great resource. And I know that we all have different ways that we communicate out services that are available in the community. And so if any of the other superintendents would like to chime in, that would be great. But really, we are going to make a very, very intentional effort at making sure that our staff is taken care of and that they are trained in order to take care of our students, in particular in response to the quarantine and all of the things inherent with this very frightening pandemic.
Thank you, Superintendent Rubin. Next, we've got an online question submitted by Tanya. And it looks like, Superintendent Santos, this is a good one for you. It's a question about how will lunch period be handled? Will there be a large crowd of students eating in the lunchroom and not wearing masks? Is there a plan to have them eat in a classroom instead?
Tanya, that's a great question. I think we're all approaching this differently. What I can tell you at Sheridan, we've decided that we're going to do all lunches in classroom. We will deliver lunches to the room. Teachers or students will come up one at a time, receive lunches. They will always be masked until it comes time to eat, actually. But from that point on, the way our schedule is set up, kids will come in and have a lunch, or they will take a lunch home at the end of the day, at the end of their instructional day in the building. But all classrooms will serve as lunchrooms in that case.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, Superintendent Santos. So we've got another caller here coming out of the Cherry Creek School District. We've got Susan joining us on the line right now. So Superintendent Siegfried, this one's for you, talking about having computer resources availability. Go ahead, Susan, with your question.
How are you going to make the resources available to those people who, due to the change in economic structure under the COVID, how are you going to get the equipment that they need to do at home? Number one. And number two, what are you going to do with things like the International Baccalaureate program?
Thank you, Susan, for the question. It's a great concern of all of ours when we have to be remote or students choose 100% online, that they have full access to the robust programs that we're putting together. As many of my colleagues did in Cherry Creek, we handed out over 7,000 computers last spring to students who did not have them at home. We chose to not recollect those over the summer because what's the worst thing that could happen is a student actually uses a computer, and they will continue to use it this school year. We've also, through our recent survey and check-in process, had parents identify if their home would need a computer. We have purchased additional computers this summer for those families, and we have decided to purchase computers for every free and reduced student in the Cherry Creek School District. I don't want a device to be a reason that a student can't engage in their education. The next part of that is not only the device, but it's high-speed internet access. Because as we use a Teams or a Google platform and kids are live streaming with their teachers, as we would have them do for at least 4 hours a day if they went remote, so there's a synchronous opportunity, they need that high-speed internet access. So I'm working to really push some of our carriers here in Colorado to step up with us and to provide some free high-speed internet access to those communities that really need it. You know, they have these big trucks they can take down to Broncos games. I wish they could take them out to some communities that could really use some high-speed internet so students don't get behind. Some of our specialized programs in our high schools, such as the IB program, will continue. Students will be able to access that by enrolling at Smoky Hill or Cherokee Trail High School. And our online will also have opportunities for honors and advanced placement classes if students choose that pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Siegfried, for that answer. And just a quick detour, you know, while we're talking tonight about school in the fall, you can only tell with the temperatures the way they've been for the past couple of weeks, there's still plenty of summer to be had. And our Open Spaces team urges you to get out and enjoy your parks, trails, and open spaces. And while you're out enjoying those amenities, we'd also like you to provide feedback on our open spaces as we look ahead to the next decade and beyond. If you visit our website at arapahoegov.com/open spaces, look for the master plan icon. On that page, you can learn more about Arapahoe County open spaces and how you can provide valuable input that will help shape the future of our parks, trails, and open spaces. The survey will be open through July 24th. We value your input and hope you can give a few minutes to share your thoughts on these well-loved and well-used spaces. Next up, we've got Lisa from Aurora joining us with a question, and we're going to send that over to Superintendent Mudd. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi. My question is Aurora Schools still going to be having the kids that aren't at their home school be required to go to their home school, which would probably help lighten some of the load in the classroom as far as how many kids are in there?
Lisa, thank you for the question. Colorado is an open enrollment state, and so like all my colleagues, APS, we have policies and protocols around how any family can look to go to something outside of their home school. We assign people to home schools to make sure that we have an appropriate environment for them, but they can apply to go to any other school in the district. We are not changing any of those policies. Typically, we let that be a site-based decision because the principal is trying to look at class sizes and trying to make that determination. So if you go onto our website, you can take a look at what the forms are in that process. It's a fairly simple process to submit that application to the school that might be of interest, and then engage with that principal to see if that's an appropriate placement for a student.
Thank you very much for that answer. And a quick reminder, if you have a question you would like to ask during this live telephone town hall, please press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Or if you're listening online, you can submit a question online. Matter of fact, our next question comes from Andy, who submitted online in regards to Littleton Public Schools. So Superintendent Ewert, this is for you. The question is, has there been a survey of teachers in the LPS district specifically asking them whether or not they feel safe returning to work? and what tools they need to ensure a safe return?
So the short answer to that question is no, there wasn't a survey asking teachers that specific question. However, teachers were involved in the Restart Task Force, providing feedback and their expertise on behalf of all of the teachers in the district. That being said, we have a survey that is live right now that will be open for about another week, and it's simply asking the teachers two questions. The first one is, what concerns do you have about restarting Littleton Public Schools? And the second one is, what questions do you have, so that as a system we can make sure that we've addressed as many of the concerns that we can and alleviate the trepidation and the fear to the degree that we can, and then also answer any of those questions that are out there lingering. I think tomorrow's communication with staff will be helpful, and then additional communication will be coming out the following week. So that's where we are with input from teachers.
Thank you very much for that answer. Next up, we've got Elizabeth joining us from Englewood on the call, and the Sheridan School District's on her mind. So Superintendent Santos, this is for you. It's about outbreak and another lockdown. Go ahead with your exact question, Elizabeth.
Well, I have children that go to that's in the Sheridan School District. My concern is when there's another breakout, and 9 times out of 10 there will be, what's the backup plan?
Thank you, Elizabeth. That's a good question. I think all my colleagues I can talk for all of us on this. First and foremost, for all of us, and what's always in front of us is the safety of students, staff, and families. We're always going to pay attention to that. We're going to lean heavily on Tri-County and what Tri-County tells us about what's going on. We'll make a decision, and more than likely we would move back to a remote model. I think all of our goals are to really move as seamlessly as possible into a remote model. That then again keeps kids safe, keeps families safe, and keeps staff safe. So our plan would be to transition back to a remote model as necessary, as safety indicates.
Thank you for that answer. Let's do another online question. And we've got one from Molly here, and it pertains to Englewood. So Superintendent Rubin, what level of PPE or other accommodations will be provided to teachers and students within the district?
Great question. Everybody's very interested in knowing about that. So I know that our districts all have plans in place in terms of what we will be providing. What I can tell you with regard to Englewood is we will be providing 5 cloth masks to each student and each staff member. So they have a clean one for each day of the week and then have the weekends to launder them. We also have a huge amount of the disposable masks that are varying medical grades, knowing that we will, we might have a kid with a bloody nose and they can't wear their mask. And of course, we need to have another mask for them, or who knows what could come up. Also, as part of our plans, we all need to have isolation rooms in case there is somebody who might be symptomatic during the day, maybe a staff member or a student. And for our health staff members or nurses who would be staffing those isolation rooms, we will have much higher levels of PPE, including face shields, gowns, obviously gloves, things like that. So we want to, as much as possible, make sure that folks have what they need to be able to come to school and not have to worry about the PPE side of things. We do get the question, will my child be able to wear their own mask? Or teachers asking, can I wear my own masks? And as long as they fit the recommendations that we get from guidance, from Tri-County or CDHPE, we understand some masks are much more comfortable for some children or adults. And as long as they fit the parameters that we're given by our health partners, we absolutely welcome people to wear their own masks. But we will be providing those, and we'll have lots of extras as well.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Our next question, we've got Dorothy joining us on the line with a question that Superintendent Munn, this one should work in your world. So, Dorothy, go ahead with your question, please.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for taking my call. My question was more about I have a daughter who's going to be starting kindergarten this year, and I know they were saying to have masks worn throughout the time during school. Are they going to have breaks for these kids who are like 5 to at least take them off a bit to breathe? And then if there is another closeout, where there'll be before and after care school provided for kids, and if there is like if the school does a complete close down and everything, where there'll be will they at least give the parents some time to either find alternate child care before they, if they announce the school is going to be closed down, give time for parents to find alternate child care.
Dorothy, thanks for the question. I think as it relates to kindergartners getting mask breaks, when you talk about the different districts on the phone and across the state, we'll all have slightly different, I think, practices and policies. As for the Aurora Public Schools, we are not going to be mandating a schedule of breaks for kids. We think at the school level, particularly at the younger ages, there'll be several natural breaks. It might be a snack break or lunch, or perhaps outdoor recess if appropriate. Social distancing can happen. So we want to make sure that those closest to the kids can kind of manage that relationship and manage helping the kids build up a understanding and a tolerance of wearing the masks over time. I believe some of the other districts may have scheduled them across the entire district in certain ways, so you're going to see a variety as we each think about our different spaces. As far as the before and after school care and the amount of that would be provided, I think that's really going to be dependent upon what's happening in a given building. If there is an outbreak where we are getting directives that we immediately need to close down and quarantine, we won't be able to provide any kind of warning around that. Obviously, it'll just be based upon what's happening and the ways that we need to respond to address public health. And there'll be differing impacts on before and after school, again, depending on what's happening in a specific building.
So as a quick reminder, this is a live interactive telephone town hall. It's your opportunity to ask the questions that are on your mind right now. So if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad. Star 3 gets you into our question queue, or if you're listening to this online, you can submit a question through the website, which here is another online question. And this one, Superintendent Siegfried, is coming to you. Stacy states, Cherry Creek School District is expecting parents to take their child's temperature and check for symptoms before sending the child off to school. How realistic is this? Isn't there a concern that parents might forget to do it?
Well, thank you. That's another one of the wrinkles in this entire conversation. So the other side of that is the having to contemplate lining up 65,000 people to take their temperature before they come into schools. 55,000 kids, or I guess minus the 8,000 are going online, and then 9,000 staff. And to realistically do that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But on the other side of it, you're not necessarily wrong. There are kids that sometimes get sent to school with some Advil and come down with the temperature midday. And so we're working to find the best reasonable approach to symptom checking as one of our strategies, but in a way that makes sense given the size of our organization. So as many of our other districts are looking into apps that individuals can have on their phone, they can fill out a symptom checker. Maybe that app shows a green light, and that's the pass into school that day. So different ways that we can do that. But honestly, we have to support each other, and we have to rely on everybody making the good and right decision for everyone else. We have to be in this together to move forward for this whole thing to work. And so great question, not an easy answer, and that's just an example of as we dig into the holes of each one of these, how complex it gets. Thank you.
Our next caller joining us is Simone from Centennial, concerned about the Littleton Public Schools and their approach to children with special needs. So Superintendent Ewert, you want to listen to this one? Simone, go ahead with your question.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Simone Bober. Thank you for taking my call. Brian, I have a question for you. So I have a son who's going to be entering fourth grade in the fall. He is severely disabled, and I'm very torn and reluctant to send him. However, for his mental health and well-being, he does need to return to school, and he does not do well whatsoever doing the virtual or distance learning. In fact, he's started to do behavioral vomiting every time we approach the Chromebook. So he ultimately needs to return to school. My question is, because so far from my listening, we haven't spoken about the special needs community or the special needs education population. And I wanted to know, how are the children that are on IEPs, are they going to be able to receive their services fully in person, as they're seeing several different paraprofessionals throughout the day, as well as several different teachers? And if we ultimately have to go back to the distance learning, if we have to shut the schools down, given there's a breakout, how will this work for the children with special needs that cannot do distance learning, that this facet does not work for them? So that's my question to you.
Thanks for the question, Simone. Yeah, you've asked just a whole pile of questions there that are just incredibly important, and really it's about our most vulnerable populations that really need to be in school, having contact with peers and with adults. And so it will be challenging. That said, our strategy around communicating with parents with special needs really is this funnel of, we want to communicate, first of all, what the programs are going to look like. And then moving into, I believe it's July 21st, we'll be meeting with all of the principals, and then they have their communication pieces to do. And then it'll move down to the teacher level and making connections with kids on IEPs. And really, the approach for a student on an IEP really will be individualized. Each student with an IEP has such unique needs that we will have to really take a close look at how do they fit into the educational programming in an era of a pandemic. And so and that there's just you start drilling into that, and there's all kinds of things that we need to solve for. So a short answer is, I would invite you, and you know Melissa Cooper, is to reach out to her if you need this information right away. Otherwise, within the next 2 weeks, principals will be back in their offices, and that's the second kind of line of defense. But if you needed information immediately, I would reach out to Melissa Cooper ASAP. Thank you for the question.
Next up, we've got Catherine from Aurora. Question pertaining to the Aurora Public Schools. So Superintendent Munn, I think it has something to do with remote learning curriculum and in-class. Go ahead with your question, Catherine.
Hi. My concern is that the remote learners will fall behind those that are in class, and next year, because it's all or nothing now, next year they will not be on the same level. How are you addressing the curriculum between both?
Thank you for the question, Catherine. And certainly that's a challenging issue that we're all working to address. We know that what happened in the spring, as I think one caller mentioned earlier, was really something that we all got thrust into and without adequate preparation. As we move into the fall, APS, like all of my colleagues, we've been working on multiple plans so that we have instructional plans that are online, instructional plans that are in-person, instructional plans that are a hybrid of the two or a mix of the two. And we are working to make sure that as much as possible the transition is seamless, because we fully expect that we will have to make some kind of transition during the year in different spaces in different ways. And so particularly in our K-8 states, there is no difference in the curriculum. Obviously, the delivery mechanism, the platforms will be different in person versus remote, but the curriculum, there will not be a difference. In the high school space, there'll be some differences depending upon where a student is in their journey, whether or not they are trying to complete and get credits to graduate or take specialized courses. There may be some differences there, but it's all curriculum that we have vetted and tried to align, obviously, to the state standards into what we would expect out of the Aurora Public Schools.
So we're joined now by Gabriella from Greenwood Village, talking about the Cherry Creek School District. So, Superintendent Siegfried, this is for you. Gabriella, go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you. So my kiddos are new to Cherry Creek schools. We have 5th graders coming in and a 7th grader, and they have not had the opportunity to meet any of the other kiddos in this school district. So we were wondering if we choose the online-only option, will there be any opportunities for the kids to socialize and kind of make some friends and meet kids, or is it always going to be purely 100% schoolwork and it'll be a little bit more challenging that way?
Well, thank you and welcome, Gabrielle. I'm glad you're here. The online aspect of it will continue to have socialization. So 5th grade, different than the middle school. In Cherry Creek, we have a full online CDE coded middle school and high school elevation. And so that is a different type of program that will be much more robust for older students. For our elementary program, we are standing up a brand new elementary program. It will be with more 5th graders from Greenwood Village, but then also for maybe a few other students from another school. And so have a chance to probably meet some kids from different neighborhoods. Built into the lessons will be opportunities to have group discussions, to socialize, and probably to develop some classroom projects, everything done virtually, but many opportunities to do that. That is such an important part of what schooling is. And that's why I think we're all working so hard to do in person and to have remote right. And when we talk about mental health, it really comes down to the need that kids have to socialize, to be with one another, to make as much normal out of this as possible. And so whether it's remote, online, in person, that is a major focus for all of us. Thank you.
So the wheels on the bus go round and round. Oh, wait, that should have been inside my head. I'm sorry. Next caller, we've got Sally from Littleton Public School question. So Superintendent Ewert, go ahead, Sally, with your question, please.
Hi. Yeah, I have a little first grader that rides a bus, and I'm wondering what that's going to look like for her this year so I can maybe do some things to help her get ready for that.
Yeah, Sally, that is a great question and one we, I think, have all been struggling with. Our original thinking was that we could have one student per seat. Students would be masked, bus drivers would be masked, etc. Buses would be cleaned after each route, after each group of students, or at least sprayed with a disinfectant. We are hearing that there might be new guidance coming out around social distancing on buses, meaning that we might be able to put 2 students based on size and age of student in a seat. That would be helpful to us. Otherwise, we are going to have to prioritize who gets to ride the bus. Obviously, students with IEPs who require special education under federal law would be the top priority. And then other students living far distances and those that meet the requirements for free and reduced lunch would be our second priorities. So this is going to be a challenge if, in fact, we can only have one student per seat. We are continuing to work with the Colorado Department of Education around what guidance is best, and we're going to see what happens. I think that some other districts may be interpreting it differently and moving forward with 2 students per seat. If we find that to be the common, understanding of social distancing on a bus and what's allowed, we will go to 2 students per seat as well. So in our survey of parents, about 4,000 parents responded to a survey, and 90% of them said that they would be willing to find alternative transportation to schools should we open for in-person learning. So we will have to rely on our parents getting kids to school as well. Thanks for that question, and stay tuned on that. More information to follow.
So next up, we've got Brenda from Aurora joining us on the call live, and Superintendent Munn, this is a good question for you. Go ahead, Brenda, with your question, please.
Thank you. My question is and concern is dealing with the students that cannot afford a computer, or you can afford to issue one to them to the point where they get behind. And that I want to know how you plan to take care of all the students to make sure that they are interacting and getting the information that they needed. I have not heard an answer, direct answer concerning that question. I've heard that question 3 times be given out, and it has not been fully answered. And my concern is everybody has been socially and economically affected by this virus.
Well, thank you, Brenda. I mean, as far as the technology question and the hardware question, we, like other districts, handed out a lot of tech devices in the spring. I believe we handed out about 17,000 devices. As students are coming back into the fall, we will have a tech distribution as part of our back-to-school event to try and make sure that we have the appropriate hardware in the hands of all of our students. I think the challenge there may also be the connectivity, and that's something, as Dr. Siegfried mentioned, we continue to work with some of the community partners and others to try and make sure that there's the appropriate internet connections and access points to that. I'm not sure what part of your question you feel has not been addressed directly, but to the extent that it's about the social and emotional connection of students, all of us, including Aurora Public Schools, will be implementing different social and emotional work using different professionals in that area to try and make sure that we are connected and engaged with our students. That is something that our staff very much wants, obviously, to stay connected to our students. And so we'll be implementing both practices and curriculum to try and make sure that we have the level of engagement with our students, with the curriculum and with other professionals in our schools. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I'm being told that we have time for just one more question. And we're bringing on the line Gail from Englewood is joining us now. So Superintendent Rubin, this question's for you. Go ahead, Gail. What is your question?
Hi, yes, I was concerned about the bus drivers and how they're going to be protected. Are they going to be taking the child's temperatures before they get on? And is there going to be another adult there to make sure that the children keep the masks on while they drive?
Hi, Gail. Thanks for your question. So much as Mr. Ewert said, with regard to that there's a lot to be determined with regard to transportation, we are also in those planning stages right now. However, our plan is that in Englewood, students will have their temperatures taken before they get on the bus, because we do not want them getting on the bus if they are running a fever or they are ill. And we are looking to see how we can staff with an additional person on the bus in order to assist in doing that. Drivers will be masked. Buses will be disinfected between each run with electrostatic sprayers and other cleaning devices. But yes, we are looking to do that. We don't want kids to get on a bus and get to school if they're running a fever. And to that end, we're definitely going to need to be having parents stay at bus stops with their students. Just as a quick FYI, much like in Littleton, indicators right now, early indicators are that many of our parents are saying that they will be transporting or getting their own children to school. And so we actually have an extremely small number of folks who are saying they're going to need bus transportation next year, which will help us then to be able to, have fewer kids riding the bus, and then obviously fewer implications all the way around.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Rubin, and all school superintendents for your answers to the community questions this evening. Everybody on the call, we've enjoyed this time with you tonight and hope that you found it useful. Before we leave, we'd like to bring our county commissioners on the line to wrap things up for us. First, we have Commissioner Nancy Jackson.
Thank you, and thanks to our guests for attending tonight and for giving us so much valuable information. Thanks to all of you who tuned in and asked so many important questions. As we continue to determine the safest path forward for our schools, we welcome your continued input. And now, Commissioner Baker.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Thanks to everyone who participated tonight. We know that these are complicated questions with very few easy answers, but we hope we've been able to clarify some things for all of you. Please continue to let us know what's on your mind, and we'll keep doing our best to make sure we're keeping everyone as safe as possible. We learned a great deal of important information tonight, but there will be more to come. So keep visiting our website, Arapahoe County, arapahogov.com, and also your school websites or your school district websites. Thank you again, and I'll turn it over to Dirk.
So thank you very much, Commissioners, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We hope you stay well and healthy. As a reminder, we will post a copy of this recording to our website within the next 24 hours. Have a wonderful evening.